Welcome back. You're watching the CNBC-TV18 Budget Verdict. We are live across our platforms. Thank you very much to the CEOs who are joining us here this evening for the first post-budget interaction with the budget architects, the budget makers. Joining me now on stage is the DIPAM Secretary, Tuhin Kanta Pandey. Mr. Pandey, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC-TV18. Before I get to you about next year's target and next year's aspiration, let's talk about this financial year. How do you intend to close the gap?
This financial year, we have a target of about 1.0 lakh crore, 1.05 lakh crore if you count disinvestment as well as the dividend from CPSEs. And we have done about 68,000 crore yet, about close to 70%, about 70%. And, usually on the dividend side, we have been exceeding. In the last year, we had a dividend target of 46,000 crore and we ended up with 59,000 crore because we had certain, headwinds this year. But nevertheless, I think we would do it better than our target there. And on disinvestment, we will continue our, we will continue to strive to meet the target. Within the market conditions that we get in the next 2 months.
You're smiling while you're saying that you'll continue to strive to meet the target, but what could you depend on? Could you depend on the likes of Hindustan Zinc, for instance, to be able to close the gap on the disinvestment side? Dividend, I understand, and you pointed that out quite eloquently, that you've been able to exceed, but on disinvestment, that's where the problem is. So could a Hindustan Zinc-like option come to the rescue to close the gap?
Well, I don't think that we really specifically, at least in those cases where we do minority stake sale, we really don't reveal the names and the numbers, and you know that certain SEBI norms are there, certain things are there where we don't, this thing is there. But certainly we had two pillars. One is the minority stake sale and the other one is the privatization, where we do what we call also strategic disinvestment. And put together, we have to look at different conditions and different stocks and look at, particularly looking into the interest of the minority shareholders and then act accordingly.
Now let's talk about the larger issue of disinvestment because, Mr. Pandey, this has been a cause of concern, and I would say that this has been one of the areas of disappointment expressed not just last night or last evening after the budget was unveiled, but over the last few years. And I'll tell you why. Because year after year, the target has been missed and missed quite significantly. 210, 175, 73, 65, 51. And we've seen a significant decline in the targets. Now, one could argue that you're now finally putting a more realistic target in place, but what seems to be the issue as far as disinvestment is concerned? And for the benefit of this audience also, let's understand, because so much was made about disinvestment, strategic disinvestment, privatization. What should we now expect as the run rate to really realistically be?
I think let me also tell that, these last 3 years is precisely the years when we had major issues just after the budget announcements. We have, for the first year, we had COVID, and the second year we had, the Delta wave, and then third, we had Omicron and Ukraine crisis, and the Fed and the others, where, the sentiment of markets completely changed. We had also some of those big ticket disinvestments, for example, BPCL, where we proceeded well. But in between, they were caught up in the energy transition issues, also the transition of geopolitical issues on fuel. And then obviously the bidders didn't want to proceed further, and they had to call off that EOI. So I think one of the big lessons that we have learned, of course, we have built up capacity in our department and the other stakeholders that we work with. But we do have, if you really see, 4 things that actually impinge on disinvestment targets as well as strategy. Necessarily, disinvestment strategy has to be calibrated on account of the following reason. One, the bandwidth. When we have, we had about 4.07 lakh crores of disinvestment over from 2014-15 over the last few years. And obviously, if you have disinvested certain equity, you have less to disinvest going forward. So that is one which is a reducing bandwidth. The second one is, of course, is the issue of markets. As I said, last 3 years, especially after that budget announcement, we had major issues relating to markets. Remember, we had to do an LIC IPO last year against a major headwinds, and we were planning a 5% IPO, where the market situation became such that we had to go for a 3.5% IPO with a special dispensation from SEBI. So these are the things that we have faced. It's quite an climate of uncertainty and challenges so far as the disinvestment is concerned. The third factor is we have keeping in mind the minority interest, which is, when we were doing ETFs over the last few years, we had a consistent, complaints from investors that there is always a price overhang. Then when they have repeatedly the issues are coming, the OFSs or the ETFs are coming at a discounted price, and which is leading to erosion of the wealth at their hands. And that was reflected also in, if you really see the market cap and the rate of return on the CPSCs on the BSE and Nifty, they were consistently falling as compared to the main BSE, Sensex or Nifty. This trend has been reversed. If you look at either you take it last 3 years put together or 2 years put together, or you take even this current year, in all these 3 situations, we had our CPSC index, BSE, both on the BSE and Nifty, has exceeded the main BSE and the Sensex. So to some extent, we have been able to close the gap. So I think this is a very important consideration of how we do it. It has to be necessarily a calibrated strategy. The quantum of share sale and the price at which it come has to be conditioned. Neither we should have a frequent share sales on that, nor we should have very much discounted stake sales. And I think we have to calibrate our expectations accordingly. The fourth important consideration is the process involved in the privatization. In the privatization, we have always, if you look at from the budget numbers, because you're starting, your whole premise is from the budget side, the budget numbers. And my plea would be that I think more than important is also the reforms. When a particular enterprise is able to, unlock its potential going forward, I think that is a much more gain for the economy and to the enterprise, because we are also for the stakeholders of the employees. We are for the enterprise, which includes employees, which includes general economy, its suppliers. So when Air India is disinvested, and obviously it has unleashed, a lot of other forces, economic forces and multipliers, which we would not have otherwise been able to do. You can say that the receipts to the government in that case was not very much so far as the targeted number was concerned. But we were able to have as an opportunity cost a lot of savings, because the 20 crore a day, we are not able to, there's no taxpayer burden on that money anymore. So it's the same case as that of Neelachal Ispat. If you have a plant which is lying closed for so many years with workers not paid, and finally not only we are able to pay them, but also there is a great deal of capex going on of almost $8 to $10 billion in the decade in that place. I think that is unleashing the whole sort of new economic forces in that. And there is a tremendous, benefit to the employees and other stakeholders, despite the fact that in the NINL, which was done this year, we did not receive any receipt.